Hello everyone, welcome to the Union Pacific Railroad Geneva Subdivision in N-Scale. My name is Daryl Cruz, owner and builder of the layout, and your host for episode 28 of season 2020. This is part 2 of what is turning out to be a 3-part series on train MPRNP. That's a manifest train from Proviso to North Platte with a stop at Franklin Grove. In part 1, we saw the train assembled at the Proviso yard, and here you can see it all set and ready to go. Part 2 now is going to be taking the assembled train and transporting it from Proviso to Franklin Grove, where it has some switching to do. So the yard crew has assembled the train, and we have coupled on the 2 locomotives that will be carrying it across the Geneva Subdivision. It's ready to go. All the air brakes are aired up and all set to go. But before we can depart the Proviso yard, there is an oncoming train, or should I say an incoming train, that is going to come into the yard and take track 1. So it is entering arrival track 1, while our train is sitting on departure track 2. So each of these tracks can be arrival or departure track, depending on how they're used at the present time. So track 1 is being used as an arrival track, and track 2 is being used now as a departure track. The 2 locomotives that will be taking our train across the Geneva Subdivision is locomotive 9687, which is a C44-9 by Scale Trains, and then an AC 4400 5714, which is made by Cottle. So we can see the remaining cars of the incoming train entering the yard and clearing the departure track. With the incoming train stopped and clear, our train is ready to depart. First thing we're going to need to do is crank up the engines, of course, and then turn on our ditch lights, since we'll be traveling across the main line. There we go. And we'll slowly try and build up some speed as we go from the departure track and cross over onto the main line. This manifest train has 27 cars, and the cars that need to be dropped off are in the first section of the train. It's the 3rd, 4th, and 5th cars. Here we see a crossing from the yard tracks onto the main line, track 1. Since the Geneva sub is a left-hand running main line, we'll go ahead and cross over a second time onto track 2. I had originally intended for this operation series to be a two-part series, and the building of the train took about 27 minutes, which isn't too long. But then when I ran across the main line and did the switching and then headed into the staging yards for North Platte, that all took close to 60 minutes. So that's too long for one video, so I'm dividing it up into 3 videos. The first part 1, is the building of the train. Part 2 here will be having the train leave Proviso and run across the main line from Proviso on to Franklin Grove. And will also include some of the switching at Franklin Grove. Part 3 will be the completion of the switching at Franklin Grove and then departing Franklin Grove for North Platte. Here we see the MPRNP going through Elmhurst. From Elmhurst, we then enter Wheaton, Illinois. This is the part of the layout that I'm going to be working on next. It's a pretty large area. Right here will be a warehouse district, so there'll be some parking lots, a couple more warehouses, and then also a siding here. And then at this curve, you'll have the metro station on the left-hand side of the tracks. Parking lots on the right-hand part of the tracks. And then a little downtown area. And then where the signals are just laying there on the ground, there'll be a neighborhood. Make sure you watch my Instagram account if you haven't already followed me on Instagram. I usually will take some video or pictures of the progress as I work on different sections. Right, from Wheaton we skip a bunch of trackage between Wheaton and Rochelle. So here we're crossing the Rock River and then making our way into the eastern part of Rochelle. Here our train goes through the downtown area. And now we go past the railroad park. You can see the park there as the engines go by. You also have the power plant and the water tower and a little bit of neighborhoods in Rochelle. And then the actual crossing in Rochelle with the BNSF. As you can see, our train is slowing down here a bit. There's quite a bit of traffic from Global 3 going into and out of the yard, and we're going to need to stop here and wait for a double stack train to cross over in front of us on its way from the Global 3 yard to Chicago. So the double stack train from Global 3 is crossing over in front of our train as it heads towards Chicago. You can see the intermodal yard, not the intermodal yard, the interchange yard there where the BNSF switcher is, and a couple cars waiting to be picked up by a different train. With the double stacks pass, we can now continue our westbound run of the MPRNP. We are now on the western edge of Rochelle proper, going past the Del Monte warehouse. But just outside of Rochelle on the western side is Global 3, which we'll pass through here momentarily. There are a lot of cornfields around Rochelle and around Global 3, which you can see in the backdrop photos. Here you have the engine facilities at Global 3. And then the classification yard. And the rest of Global 3. We're not quite to Franklin Grove yet, but we're going to go ahead and stop here at milepost 85, which is just east of Global 3. Excuse me, just east of Franklin Grove. The siding at Franklin Grove is very short, so we're not able to take the entire train with us as we do our switching in Franklin Grove. So the train will stop here at milepost 85, uncouple the first 5 cars, 3 of them which will be dropped off at Franklin Grove, and we'll take just those cars with us to Franklin Grove and then complete our switching. The rest of the train we will leave here by Global 3. And now we finally have arrived at Franklin Grove. This is the area that I just most recently completed. Did some work on the Pitzer & Sons grain elevator there on the right, as well as putting in the roads and crossings and put gravel down and added some details. Now Franklin Grove is kind of a complicated town to switch, especially if you're switching both industries. The sidings are opposite facing and are also on 2 different tracks. So Pitzer & Sons has the turnoff facing in one direction and is on track 2. So we can go ahead and switch it directly right now. But then Consolidated Grain and Barge, which you can just see a bit of the siding there, is on track 1 and it's opposite facing. So we're going to go ahead and switch Pitzer & Sons here. And then when we're done with switching Pitzer & Sons, then we'll need to conduct a runaround of the engines to get to the other side of the cars. Change from track 2 to track 1, switch Consolidated Grain and Barge, go back from track 1 to track 2, complete another runaround to get to the front of the cars, and then connect up with the rest of the train. Like I said, it's kind of complicated. For right now, though, we're just doing a simple operation of switching out Pitzer & Sons. This ADMX car here is going to be dropped off at Pitzer & Sons. There you can see Consolidated Grain and Barge in the background. And you can also see a manifest train. Oh, I take it back. A oil train going through. Oil car trains, or the crude oil train cars, are made by BLMA. I believe there's 27 cars on this train, plus buffer cars in front of and at the end of the crude oil train, the crude oil cars. Brakeman was making sure the cars were coupled. Before we drop off the ADMX car, we do have a couple of cars that we're going to be picking up. We are picking up the green BN car, and then also the orange GACX car. So those are the 2 cars we're picking up. The CSX car we're going to go ahead and put back, along with the ADMX car that we're dropping off. Alright, engineer and brakeman not communicating too well there. Brakeman uncoupled it, and the engineer right away coupled them back up again. Let's try it again. Hey, the right direction this time. You notice we are leaving the crossing uncovered as much as possible as we complete these movements. So the CSX car we're going to go ahead and put back. We don't want that one. And we are going to also then drop off the ADMX car. If you're interested on how this scene came together, make sure you check out the layout update video from last week on Franklin Grove. And we'll go ahead and drop these two off. Alright, so we have completed switching Pitzer and Sons, and now we need to try to switch out consolidated grain and barge, which will require us to get the engines to the other side of these cars, and we'll have to do a runaround. Before we can do that, though, we do have another crude oil tank train going through. We still have a lot of work to do here at Franklin Grove, but we're going to save that for part 3 on our series of operations on train MPRNP. So I hope you've enjoyed this video so far. Make sure you stay tuned. In a couple of days we'll have the final part 3 of the series, where we'll complete this runaround of these cars and get to track 1 and switch out consolidated grain and barge, and then put the whole train back together and continue our journey westbound on the Geneva Subdivision. Make sure you stay tuned for that. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day, everyone.